Alyssa even trying to force her looking this spread. James can no longer live hidden. He springs from beneath the mattress and stabs Clive inside the neck with a knife, killing him right away. Alyssa too is sopping wet in his blood. Alyssa tells James that they're in severe trouble now, blaming themselves for breaking into Clive's residence. James defends his actions, pronouncing that Clive changed into going to damage her, so he had no preference however to kill him. Alyssa, nonetheless aggravating, responds that the police might not consider that. She says they want to get rid of the frame. They both attempt to raise Clive's frame however fail. James mentions he had studied that the frame becomes heavier after demise. Alyssa indicates they attention on cleansing up their tracks. Collectively they undergo the residence, wiping away their fingerprints and any proof that might hyperlink them to the crime. James, sitting through Clive's frame, displays on how he does not experience the manner he notion he might after killing a person. Alyssa, nonetheless shaken, asks why he even needed to kill Clive. James insists that Clive changed into a serial killer and that he stored her existence. He then suggests Alyssa the snapshots and motion pictures of Clive's crimes as evidence. Alyssa tells him to depart those with the frame and indicates they get out of there. Alyssa adjusts her garments, burns the antique ones, and tells James they want to visit her father Leslie right now. James factors out that her jacket has blood stains on it, suggesting she burn it as nicely. Alyssa refuses, pronouncing it is her father's jacket and she'll in no way smash it. They eventually make their manner to the railway station. Alyssa is anxious, fearing they may be stuck, so she comes to a decision they ought to change their look. She dyes her hair blonde and offers James a brand new haircut. They purchase new garments and away the educate. Whilst ready, Alyssa asks James in which he were given the knife. He ignores her query. In the meantime, Clive's mother returns. Domestic screams upon locating his frame and calls the police. Two investigators, Eunice and Terry, arrive on the scene and start their research. Throughout their seek they discover Topher's pockets beneath the mattress. They carry Toir in for wondering. Emotional Toir insists he did not have love with all of us. Terry tells him they do not care whether or not he had love or now no longer, they just need the girls. Call Toir famous that her call is Alyssa and describes the brown leather-based jacket she changed into sporting. He additionally mentions that she changed into with a boy named James. The police now have agent proof to observe upon whilst they look forward to the educate. Alyssa starts evolved to sense hungry, so that they head to a close-by eating place. She can't stop glancing at James, haunted with the aid of using the image of him stabbing Clive inside the neck. James, sensing her pain, explains that the knife become a birthday present from his father for searching. Alyssa, still unsettled, questions why everybody would convey a knife round. Whilst James reaches out to preserve her hand, she pulls away, pronouncing she would not need him to touch her. Alyssa excuses herself beneath the pretense of going to the restroom, but alternatively escapes through a window. She comes to a decision to depart him at the back of and disappears. James waits for her for a long term, earlier than understanding that Alyssa isn't always coming again for the primary time. Feelings start to stir inside him. He is aware his father greater surely now. The manner he used terrible jokes to manage with the ache of dropping his spouse. Desperate, James methods a few Avenue thugs and asks them to conquer him up. Whilst they refuse, he gives them cash to do it. After the thrashing, James finally is aware something approximately himself. He isn't always the psychopath he concept he become. He has feelings too. In a second of readability, he calls the police, telling them he has data approximately a homicide. The scene shifts to 11 years in advance. James, as a younger boy, tells his mom that he desires to see the Ducks that day. His mom, Melvin, though visibly suffering with despair, would not appear to be in war with Phil. There may be no argument, simply an underlying heaviness. James and his mom head to a close-by pond to watch the geese. Earlier than they step out of the auto, she hugs him tightly, telling him she loves him very a good deal. James is unaware that his mom has come there to take her personal lifestyles. As he receives out to feed the geese, she hastens the auto, intentionally using it into the pond. She drowns as James watches helpless, witnessing her mom committing the unthinkable again. With inside the gift, James sits with inside the police station, grappling together along with his mind. He starts evolved to rethink whether or not confessing to the homicide is a great concept. Whilst the police officer begins evolved thinking him James' modifications, the concern claiming that his mom's loss of life 11 years in the past become actually a homicide, now no longer a self-damage act. The officer Kerwarren clarifies that what took place to his mom become certainly a self-damage act, now no longer a homicide. James acts as Elvin, though he would not absolutely recognize gambling the position of a person mentally disturbed. The officer, sensing something off, shall we him pass, brushing off him as emotionally risky. In the meantime, Detective Terry and Eunice go to Phil for further research. They accumulate data approximately James mastering greater approximately his history. Later they go to Alyssa's stepfather's residence to inquire approximately her involvement with inside the homicide. Taken aback with the aid of using the information, Tony distances himself from the scenario, claiming no connection to Alyssa, considering that she isn't always his organic daughter. Whilst Terry asks Gwen for a current picture graph of Alyssa, Gwen is not able to offer one. Eunice, looking at Gwen's fragile intellectual nation, fast realizes that Gwen would possibly want expert assist. In the meantime, Alyssa stories the start of her menstruation and heads to a store to shop for undergarments, but she fast realizes that she's out of money. Desperation drives her to discreetly scout borrow the undergarments. However, the shop protect catches her with inside the act as he prepares to look her and get in touch with the police. A surprising distraction takes place. A determined outdoor loses sight of his infant. The protect tells Alyssa to attend whilst he is going to assist the determined, seizing the possibility Alyssa makes her get away from the shop. As soon as outdoor she spots the lacking infant gambling close by. Alyssa takes a deep breath and comes to a decision to assist Maine the kid again. To their worry, determined for a quick second she feels an experience of doing something proper on the different facet. James returns to the eating place in which Alyssa had left him, hoping she would possibly come again. He sits there ready, protecting directly to the wish that she hasn't deserted him absolutely again. At the shop, the protect, having dealt with the lacking infant scenario, surprisingly gives Alyssa a few biscuits, displaying her kindness as opposed to punishment. He lets her go along with a caution now no longer to scouse Bordeaux again. However, as Alyssa leaves, guilt momentarily fades and she or he swipes the undergarments one greater time, but outdoor a wave of consciousness hits her. What she's doing is incorrect. She throws the stolen gadgets away, absolutely conscious now that this behavior wasn't honest, now no longer to herself and in particular now no longer to James, who had best attempted to guard her. She regrets betraying him with the aid of using jogging off. Determined to make matters proper, Alyssa heads again to the eating place and reveals James still awaiting her. Conquer with guilt, she apologizes to him whilst James additionally seeks forgiveness for the killing of the person. In that second their bond rekindles more potent than earlier. Then in the meantime the research group at Clive's house uncovers James' knife, a essential piece of proof. In the meantime James and Alyssa scouse Bordeaux automobile and head in the direction of Leslie's area. The automobile best has one cassette which they to begin with experience listening to. But after some time Alyssa loses hobby in it and throws it away. She believes that they did the proper thing with the aid of using killing the person, or even thinks that the police have to praise them with a medal. After a while the automobile runs out of fuel and they control to attain a fuel station, and James tells Alyssa to fill the tank whilst he maintains the automobile jogging so nobody notices. Simply then the proprietor of the fuel station arrives and recognizes that the automobile is going for walks without keys. She realizes it's stolen and tells them that in the event that they need to gasoline the automobile they need to show it off. James reluctantly agrees. The proprietor fills up the tank, attempting to purchase them, while even as secretly signaling to her son to name the police, but her son does not trip directly to the sign and does not apprehend what she approaches. As soon as the tank is complete the proprietor takes Alyssa interior the shop to pay. Alyssa, who has no cash, pretends to need to visit the restroom. The proprietor catches directly to her excuse and tells her son to name the police. At that second James walks into the shop pretending to hold a gun through tucking his hand into his jacket and needs the proprietor allow Alyssa pass. He pushes the proprietor right into a room and locks her within. The proprietor's son does not try and assist his mom as a substitute. He seems content material with the state of affairs due to the fact he's uninterested in operating. He tells James and Alyssa that he additionally desires to depart and starts evolved taking gadgets from the shop. James begins evolved the automobile and he and Alyssa quickly force away, leaving the boy standing there looking them pass. In the meantime Terry and Eunice visit Professor Clive's residence to research. Talking with Clive's mom, Eunice asks if Clive had any private troubles, affairs or conflicts. Clive's mom, even as understanding everything approximately Clive's moves, denies any such element, announcing that he had no affair. In truth, Clive's mom is the only who has hidden all proof of his crimes. She asks the investigators to depart, and as they may be approximately to move, Eunice advises her to continually stand through the truth. In the meantime Alyssa makes a Telcel smartphone name from the Telcel smartphone sales space to her mom. Gwen asks her to return back domestic. However, Alyssa responds through telling her to inform Tony to off. Later Clive's mom's moral sense awakens and he or she brings the proof of his crimes to Eunice. Eunice straight away takes the proof to Terry. After reviewing it, Terry says that even as Clive can be a killer, it does not alternate the truth that Alyssa and James aren't the actual murderers. Alyssa and James arrive at Leslie's residence. However, as opposed to Leslie, any other girl opens the door. The girl informs them that Leslie has left. Whilst Alyssa hears this, she begins evolved to depart. However, James asks the girl if she is aware of in which Leslie's new residence is. The girl confirms she does. At this factor the stolen vehicle they're using breaks down, forcing them to preserve their adventure walking as they stroll. It receives darkish and that they in the end encounter a cabin with inside the center of nowhere which seems to be Leslie's new domestic. Leslie is extremely joyful to see Alyssa and without delay hugs her. He looks like an alcoholic and drug addict. Alyssa introduces James to Leslie as her boyfriend and asks if they may live with him for some days. Leslie hesitates for a second, however then is of the same opinion, announcing they are welcome to live so long as they want. The following morning Leslie invitations James to play a golf taking pictures sport with knives. Leslie misses the goal, however James hits the bullseye on his first attempt. Leslie is pretty inspired with the aid of using James' talent. Leslie then asks James if Alyssa talks approximately him regularly. James responds that she does, and listening to this makes Leslie really satisfied. He hugs James in excitement. In the meantime, the investigators carry James and Alyssa's dad and mom collectively for a joint interrogation. Alyssa's dad and mom attempt guilty, the whole thing on Phil. Phil defends James, explaining that as a toddler he witnessed his mom dedicate the self-damage act which affected his mind. However, he insists that James could not be capable of such critical crimes. Eunice feels an experience of pity for each of the children. Later, James and Alyssa witness Leslie being worried and drug dealing. James shows that staying there won't be a true concept. However, Alyssa defends her father, announcing they're flawlessly secure after finishing the drug deal. Leslie defends his moves, claiming that he is just combating in opposition to the authorities and rich human beings to lighten the mood. Leslie takes James and Alyssa to a local bar on the alternative facet the investigators controlled to discover Leslie's antique residence. After they ask the lady dwelling there approximately Leslie, she denies understanding anything approximately him. Terry, upon listening to this, leaves. However, Eunice discreetly slips her number to the lady, telling her that she wants to guard each James and Alyssa from Terry. In the meantime, on the bar, Alyssa and Leslie are dancing collectively. Alyssa thank you Leslie that he in no way forgot her birthday and constantly dispatched her playing cards. James watches them from the facet and starts to evolve to experience that Alyssa is drifting away from him as they preserve consuming. The lady from Leslie's antique residence arrives and calls Leslie over to speak. It's Miles, revealed that Leslie has every other toddler with this lady. The lady asks Leslie for new uniforms and books for the kid and accuses him of hiding out even as the police are seeking out him. Alyssa, upon seeing the kid, is taken aback and asks if Leslie is his father. The kid responds affirmatively, leaving Alyssa in disbelief. Leslie attempts to keep away from the scenario, however in the end frustrated storms out of the bar. In a panic he begins evolved his vehicle and by chance runs over a canine. Alyssa and James, though James that he ought to have informed her in advance as she might have delivered him a present with. Inside the center of this conversation, Leslie interrupts, caution them now no longer to pay attention to Eunice as she is attempting to get them each locked up in prison. Alyssa responds, pronouncing it super that Leslie himself referred to as the police, however, is now pronouncing this. Leslie explains that he did it to guard her from getting into hassle. Alyssa receives indignant and kicks Leslie with inside the leg, making him in pain. She then tells him that if he couldn't improve his kids nicely he shouldn't deliver beginning to them. Alyssa asks Leslie if he had genuinely dispatched the birthday playing cards all the ones years or if his mom Gwen had written them. Leslie admits that it became now no longer him, however his mom Gwen, who had written the playing cards herself. Listening to this breaks Alyssa's coronary heart because the character she had taken into consideration of Father the CERN turned out to be her enemy. Leslie attempts to give an explanation for however Alyssa tells him to close up. Then Alyssa asks Eunice if they give up now whether or not they may be kept in a juvenile middle and if she and James might be collectively. Eunice responds that it is hard for that to manifest. Alyssa apologizes, after which knocks Eunice subconscious via way of means of hitting her on the top. James grabs the boat keys and the two of them run in the direction of the boat. As quickly as they attain the seashore, James tells Alyssa that she ought to inform the police that he abducted her so she may be free and not anything will manifest to her. However, Alyssa refuses and insists that they ought to run away collectively. James apologizes, however then in a second of desperation he hits Alyssa on the top and knocks her out. Earlier than jogging in the direction of the coast, the police arrive simply in time to seize Alyssa. They then begin firing at James as he runs. Even as escaping, James displays at the reality that he has turned 18 these days. It's far handiest now that he begins to recognize the genuine which means of relationships and the feelings he had been trying to find a majority of these years. Sooner or later the belief he had been chasing for see you later has come to him.